All right. The Chieftain has been reworked, and I want to talk about the Chieftain's new identity. This Chieftain rework has a lot of people in their feels. No one's saying it's good. They're either saying it's mid or it's trash. What I'm saying is the Chieftain is cheap. Very cheap. The Chieftain is going to allow you to only get fire res. It's going to open up at least 4 suffix slots on your gear. So when you see this, modifiers to fire resistance also apply to cold and lightning. It might help you to rethink how this works. Think of it as you now have 4 free suffixes on your gear. And how good is 4 free suffixes? End game, probably not that good. You're going to be able to finagle your resistances in the end game. So this is not an end game ascendancy. But for solo self-found, for hardcore, for racing, for new players, you'll get over that awkward resistance hump that you get when you go from Act 10 to maps, and then you start upgrading your gear, and you constantly have to re-roll resistances. You constantly have to keep your resistances in check. You're wasting suffixes on resistances. Now when you get a ring, you can get a ring with like fire resistance, chaos resistance, and recoup instead of fire, cold, and lightning. You're going to be able to pick so many better suffixes. And suffixes, for me, are usually the better and harder to get slots on your pieces of gear. This is just going to open up so much cheap and effective elemental resistances, and it's fantastic. It is absolutely fantastic as a starter. Obviously, you're going to re-roll another character, turn this guy into a jug or something to get to that end game. But for the start, you are going to be saving so much cash, so much headache, and so much time not needing to rebalance any of your resistances. On top of that, you're going to be very tanky because getting to 85 fire resistance, 85 max fire resistance is going to be super easy. You throw on a purity of elements, and then maybe that shield, and you already got another plus 10 right there. There's a few slots on the skill tree. You're going to be at 85 fire resistance, super easy. 90 coming pretty quickly if you even want to go that far. You probably don't even need to go that far. So that is very nice. And then this one, nearby enemies have no fire resistance against burning damage over time. Now, I don't really like this because of the while you are stationary, but elemental resistance stripping is complex for new players. New players don't really want to have to deal with that. So you grab this and it's just going to set any burning damage to 0. Which is really strong early on because a lot of that resistance stripping stuff doesn't come in till later in the game. And a lot of times you got to do double curses, and then you have to strip their resistances with, what is that stupid thing called? Strip their resistances with exposure. You have to do -20 to those resistances with exposure. So now with this skill, you don't need to worry about exposure early on. You just grab this and you run something that burns or ignites. You hit them, you hold still, it ignores their resistance. It's just going to be great for map bossing. It's going to be great for early shaper fights. It's going to be great for all of that early stuff until you get into the late game stuff where this is going to fall off. And this is going to lose its usefulness because you're going to be able to reduce the resistance to below 0 at some point in the game. But early on, extremely strong. And so with this, you can only worry about one curse, and that's punishment. You throw this on with punishment. You don't need to worry about flammability. You don't need to worry about any of that stuff. Just throw punishment on, or not even throw punishment. This right here basically means you don't need to run any curses. It's pretty nice. It's pretty effective. I wish it didn't say this stationary. I don't think it needs this stationary. That's kind of a buzzkill. And stationary is not a thing. Path of Exile keeps trying to make stationary a thing, but it's just really not. As part of the Chieftain's identity of being the cheapskate, he is now the cheapskate ascendancy. Non-unique cluster jewels, increases and reductions to other damage types in a large radius to be transformed to apply to fire damage. Now there's 2 slots you can really use this on. It's going to be this slot here. It's going to turn these axe nodes into fire nodes. I don't really think that's very useful. I don't think using the slams or the attacks, I mean, most of the attacks start with physical and convert to fire anyways, unless this is doing 30 physical and 30 fire, so it doubles up. I don't think it's very useful there, but it is kind of useful here. If you grab this socket here, you're going to be able to turn this 25 cold damage into 25 fire damage. This 16 cold into fire. And then I don't know if it's going to change this penetrate lightning res to penetrate fire res. Hopefully it's intelligent enough to do that. And you don't really need that res penetration because they're going to be a 0 res, so you don't need to worry about that. But you get that 30 lightning. But you can get rid of the lightning node here. So you have the fire, and then you have this cold node, which give you 30% fire damage, and then some extra fire dot. There's not a lot of fire dot on the table. Now it'd be cool if you can go over to this node here, but there isn't a socket with large to allow you to get to here. Now if they rework it so you can get this 25 cold, 25 lightning, and have that switch to 50 fire, this would be very strong, especially because these are also 16 on these nodes here. So that would be really nice if you can use it there. For the most part, it's a dead node, but it does fit the theme of trying to allow you to get the properties you need for fire on a cheaper budget. Because you throw it in there, and it's going to turn all the damage nodes around it to fire, so it's just going to make things a little easier to get fire damage. And that, to me, seems like the Chieftain's identity. The Chieftain's new identity is being the cheap starter build that you can build. Even these Tokahama, and Towaha, even these are designed to cheapen the cost to get a high damage weapon. With these, your weapon damage isn't as important because you're getting free support gems in your armor, and then you're getting the free Tawaha chosen. You know what? Google, pronounce this word for me. Let's pronounce this made up fictional word. These crazy Kiwis making their Kiwi words here pronounced. It's not even a real word. Wait, how to pronounce... Oh, nope, that's a different word, but let's pronounce this word.
Tafeo.
Tafeo. Yeah, I can't even pronounce it. Let's search for the word. Tawhoa. Towaha. Tohoa. That's what I'm going to call it. Tohoa. This whole video is just me trying to pronounce Tohoa now. And I can't do it. I can't do it. Anyways, these notes here are going to be very good on a cheap budget. They're going to fall off as you get really good gear. They're going to fall off in comparison to something like the Berserker's 40% increased damage. They're not going to be that good in-game. But at the start of the league, from white maps to red maps, these are probably pretty strong if you want to fuck with some slam skills. I think they even added strike skills. Yeah, they added strike skills to this one. Some strike and some slam. You want to do some strike and some slam? These might be really good and cost effective. The totem, that's dead. Everyone's talked about this. This is 5% chance to explode for 500% of their maximum life. This has potential to be a screen clear, ignite, prolif situation. But for the most part, it's dead. And this Sun's Light is going to be dead pretty quick once you get your gear to strip resistances. But early on, this guy is going to be very strong. Very strong. So if you're the type of person who always builds two builds, you build a starter build and then you build your main build, and you want to build that you don't have to sink a lot of currency into, you don't have to spend a lot of time fixing your resistances, you don't want to have to worry about stripping fire res, and you want to do something that either ignites or burns, I think it's a very good ascendancy now for that purpose. Kind of dog shit for everything else, but if you want to be on a budget, you want to play some solo self-found, you want to save as much currency as possible to build your second character instead of your first character, this is a pretty good option. I'm very tempted to do a Chieftain starter simply to see if I feel a difference in the resistance pressure, in the gear pressure, in the fire damage pressure, because fire damage is pretty low on the tree. It'll be interesting. I don't know if I'd ever actually take this Flames Advance. It just seems like there just needs to be more here. It really should be in addition to. Unique jewels cause increases and reductions to other damage type in large radius to be transformed to apply to fire damage. Is there any reduction? Is there any damage reduction? Maybe we're getting new damage reduction nodes. We get some new damage reduction nodes. I don't think there's any damage reduction, like straight damage reduction on the tree. If there was some damage reduction, that'd be cool. So here's a pretty cool 50% armor while stationary, 25% chance to gain endurance charges. With that stationary node, this will be pretty cool. You can build a pretty cool stationary build, but that stationary node is only to get fire resistances to 0. I forgot about these ones. You can get 15 fire multiplier here, a total of 20 if you go into this socket with that. And you can get 25% fire damage, then 15% fire multi. And if you look over here for your fire multis, this one's got 12 plus 24 fire res. So this is already 15 multi, which is pretty high for fire multi. This one's only 10. Obviously, you get the 30 fire damage. But if you wanted to path up this way, I always kind of want to path up this way, but it's always like double dead because you have elemental and physical. Obviously, if you're doing physical to elemental, this is pretty good. But these nodes aren't that bad either. These nodes are really not all that bad. And this will be 30 fire res instead of 30 elemental, so it doesn't really change it, but it does change these physicals to fire, so you want to do any physical conversion stuff. So it might be kind of good to grab this socket on the way there, and then you can grab these, give you a little bit of fire. Then when you grab this, you'll be able to grab here. So they allow you to do a little bit of fire, allow you to path a little bit differently than you otherwise would have. But going this way, you get this 50 elemental. So it's just seemingly half baked. So I'm guessing they're going to have some pretty significant redesigns to this skill tree here to allow that to be more properly utilized. Or someone just had a brain fart and thought it would be a good idea. But with the amount of hate, I wouldn't be surprised if they buffed it a little or did something to change it. Maybe not. I think it's pretty good. I would give it a tier until probably T10. Maybe even T16. And then the problem is it goes from A to F real quick. That's the problem with this Ascendancy is it has no late game applications here unless these somehow are stronger. These two over here, unless they're somehow stronger than I remember, there's just no late game application for this Ascendancy that I can see. None whatsoever, unless there's some type of shenanigans with this one or some way to turn this 5% chance to explode dealing 500% damage to apply to bosses somehow. You obviously have that worm flask, and you can deal the damage to the worm flask, and the worm might explode on a boss, but it's only 5%. I think you only drop in like 3 or 4 worms. So the odds of getting that 5% proc are crazy low. But if you look at the Ascendancy in a positive light over the fact that it's just a very cheap Ascendancy, it's pretty solid. I like it. That is all. Let the hype begin.